Hello, welcome to this video. I am not very experienced in skateboarding for the record. I have never ridden a skateboard before, but with a recent church group, I've been introduced to skateboarding. And after watching a video by, I forget his name now, but I will post a link down in the description, and I'm sure there's a little thing up here with his name on it. But I got inspired to make a mountain board. And as you can see, I built it already, and it is pretty awesome. But the main point of this video is that it's a do-it-yourself video, also by budget. So far, I've only spent $90 on this board. And after this, you will see the video clips. Sorry, not all of it's video. It's kind of more of a slideshow with some video clips spliced in. Towards the end of the video, there are some riding scenes where I have my friends from my church group, as well as some other people from the skate park that we took it to in Columbia, Missouri. And they're just testing out the board for me because a lot of the shots that are taken, I am not advanced enough to ride it. But, hope you enjoy this next clip of the video. I'll come by at the end and tell you some more information. All right.
So the first thing you need to look at when building a board is the materials. On this board I used 1/8 inch plywood, which came into about 15 bucks a sheet. The next thing you have to look at is the shape of the board. Now, to get the shape of the board that keeps the strength when you're using it, you have to build a form with a concave shape as well as turned up sides for the steering, which you will see later in the video. Now, for the form you have to be very careful and use a lot of clamps. Make sure you don't bend the board too much or too little. I used a concrete bag on top to make sure you keep steady, even pressure throughout the entire board. Now, when you take off the board, you need to be very careful about taking it off to keep from splitting the wood or anything if there is glue that is leaked out from excess use. And after you have removed it from the framework, then you have to look into cutting it. And due to the board being a very odd shape, you definitely want more than one person to do it, and I used my dad's help in cutting this due to it being a very odd and dangerous shape to cut, with the concave main deck and as well as the turned up angles for the sides. It is fairly difficult to cut. I recommend using a hand tool rather than a bench tool like the saws that we were using in these videos, but these are more efficient to get fewer or more straight lines in your final product. After these, we then rounded off the corners with a bandsaw that I did not get video or pictures of due to it being fairly quick and easy. We then used a router to round off the sharp edges on the sides and then sanded down just a little bit. The next stage will be lacquering and sealing the boards off.
As far as lacquering goes, I put on 2 or 3 coats across the entire board. The most important thing is to keep it elevated and not touching anything else while it is drying. And for the lacquer, I just used a basic lacquer product we use on most of our cabinet work. So that's how you use lacquer. Now, as far as the construction of the brackets, which are the steering of the board, I kept fairly close to Homestead Economics video on design of the steering struts, but with a few modifications on where I saw there could be improvements. But the first thing I do is that I sink the bolts before I put the struts onto the board so that the bolts are securely fastened to the board. After that, then I built the struts out of some 1-inch square tubing. It's a metal plate to hold on the top and a piece of square tubing and a chunk of all thread to make the axle on the lower part of the strut. And that was pretty much it, with a pivoting point in the middle. I made sure that the stopping point would be built out of the frame of the struts so that it wouldn't hypersteer and go into the board with the tire. And it was fairly easy to construct these things and build them, all in all. But the hardest part was finding the correct springs. I tried extension springs from a local hardware store at first. I tried long ones and short ones. The long ones bottomed out or wouldn't go into the bracket, while the short ones would be long enough but would not have the strength required to be able to keep stable while steering. The solution I found to this was torsion springs. So, to get the torsion springs, I went to a local department store and bought some $1 clamps. I took the torsion springs out of those and bent those to have a circle at the end that I could wrap or attach the spring to the bolts of the brackets. This worked out fairly well in that I was able to attach these and have good travel springs because it extended out to almost a ½ inch on the interior angle and was fully extended down to, or no, 1.5 inches long down to ½ inch. I'm sorry for that little confusion there. But after that, the springs work surprisingly well. It's just a little bit hard and you have to know what you're doing. But I found that as a very cost-effective way to build the springs and get them to work. After this, the steering system was fairly well. But one piece of construction on the board was a flaw. The board was so long that whenever we tested it out, it could not support weight in the middle. It would bend clear down to the ground. So I put a reinforcement bar in the middle. The reinforcement bar was just some spare scrap metal I had laying around that I just cut to a length, drilled some holes in, and then attached to the bottom of the board via the 2 bottom bolts on the steering clamps, or on the steering bracket. This has made it extremely durable. It's probably one of the strongest boards that are on the market, unless you look into a carbon fiber board or anything of the like. But now, the reinforcement bar was able to fix all the problems of the board as far as strength. And also it made it look pretty cool down the middle. But also it reinforces in case of any ground out, it doesn't affect the board directly. So I find that is a pretty good modification to the board design. And that's all that I put into the steering. Now that we're getting into the final stages of building this board, we have to look into aesthetics. Now I have done in the past, with my family, we've done hydro dipping. We hydro dipped a deer skull last year and it turned out really well. So what I plan on doing with this board is hydro dipping it. It's a fairly simple process. You just buy some oil-based paint and spray it onto a tank of water and then dip the product through it. So the first step in this is to build the hydro dip tank. This is accomplished fairly easily. I took some 2x8 and cut it into about a 4 foot long by 1 foot wide trough. Then I used a trash bag and laid it out in the tank and filled it up with water. You want to make sure that the tank is deep enough that when you have the product in it, it will not overflow or the product will not touch the bottom. So for the product, I just taped off and masked off the board so I wouldn't get any paint on the top because I wanted to keep the top a fairly well looking like a natural wood finish. After this, then you just take it in the water, and note for when you are spraying the paint on for the hydro dip, do not spray side to side or the paint will become gummy and not mix together to make the cool patterns and streaks that you want when you hydro dip something in this fashion. So after you've done that, and you spray in one spot consistently with each can, then you dip it and you have someone come along afterwards with a strainer and take away the excess paint on top so you don't double layer the paint on top of the product. After this, you let it dry out, and I ended up putting 3 to 4 coats of clear coat on top of the board. I put a final coat of deck finish on top of the board to make sure it was a little bit grippy if the grip tape was not there. Then after we bought the grip tape, we went to the skate park in Columbia and tested it out. Hope you enjoy these clips.
Starting to speed wobble. Guys, speed while you're doing yours. You're thinking of making. Now it's gonna hit the highest peak. All of a sudden there's a creek. Guys, look at this. Oh, you made it. Alright. Yeah, it's super fun and mellow in all honesty. Yeah. Everyone was so much more fun.
Yeah, except it went into the creek. Yeah.
That one's really cool.
I don't know about this, but I'm going.
All right.
Yeah. Dang. All right.
I'm just saying.
Alright, hope you enjoyed those clips. As you can see, the board can take some pretty rough terrain and is also fairly stable. If not a little bit long, but for off-road riding you kind of want that length. But one thing that's important is this is a very good beginner board. With this board, since I constructed it for me as a very amateur skateboarder, but it is relatively easy to ride. I'm able to balance on it fairly well at this stage. And granted, it has a little bit of trouble going on flat ground, but downhill it is extremely fun. But one thing, like I said, this board only cost me $90. But I will be able to build and sell these for a price that's a little bit more because I will not be able to go, I'll have to get higher quality materials. But I will only build and sell these if my conditions are met. If by the end of the month, I will post a date in the description. If by that time I have 1,000 likes and 100 positive comments, I will start selling these. Granted, for this one, it will probably be a price range close to $200 for the whole thing, hydro dipped and everything. If not more, depending on shipping and hours and material cost. But hope you enjoyed the video. If you want me to build these boards, like and comment. And hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. Bye. Oop, there it goes. Got it!
I lost mine.
That's all.
Making your turn.
I'll get it.
Cody, stop it! You're saying.